Hey everyone, welcome to today's Explainer. We are diving right into the burden of empire, taxation, and colonial defiance. And look, we're not just going to bore you by unpacking dusty old tax codes. No way! We're going to get right into the core tensions of power, fairness, and literally, the road to revolution. Let's explore how just a few financial decisions made far across the Atlantic completely sparked a rebellion that changed the entire world.
Okay, let's establish a baseline principle here. 1 Timothy 5:18 states, "The worker deserves his wages." This really sets up a fundamental idea of fairness, right? Work should be rewarded, and yeah, debts absolutely must be paid. But when you look at governance, while debts are a reality, the taxes used to pay those debts, they've got to be just. And crucially, they need to be mutually agreed upon. This idea of fairness and mutual agreement, well, that's literally the foundation of the conflict we're exploring today.
So stop and really imagine this for a second. What happens when someone else makes all the rules for you? They take your hard-earned money and they give you absolutely zero say in the matter. You've got no voice, no vote, no influence over how your cash is spent or what rules are suddenly dictating your life. Just imagine that frustration, that deep feeling of powerlessness. That is exactly what the American colonists were experiencing. I mean, it's a completely universal human reaction to push back when your agency is just totally stripped away.
Part 1. The root of the conflict and the escalating pressure cooker.
So Great Britain found itself in some massive debt, and they decided the American colonists basically needed to foot the bill. The colonists, as you might guess, viewed this as completely unfair because they had absolutely no representation in Parliament. And it wasn't just a one-off bad law, it was a rapidly escalating pattern. Back in 1765, the Stamp Act demanded an official stamp on practically anything printed. Newspapers, legal docs, even playing cards. Yeah, they literally taxed Friday night poker. Then, moving to 1767, the Townshend Acts slapped taxes on everyday imports like glass and paint. And finally, in 1773, the Tea Act. This one allowed the British East India Company to sell tea at a reduced price, but they sneakily kept a hidden tax attached to it. The pressure was seriously building up.
Part 2. Principle over price and the Tea Act trick.
Now, you'd think cheaper tea would make everyone happy, right? But the colonists saw right through this whole economic trick. On one hand, sure, you get lower prices, but attached to those lower prices is a hidden tax asserting absolute British authority. The colonists realized that buying this cheap tea meant silently agreeing that Parliament had the right to tax them without representation. So they decided their freedom was worth way more than a discount on a beverage. It wasn't about the money at all. It was 100% about refusing to accept an unjust authority.
And that brings us to this incredibly iconic phrase, no taxation without representation. This became the ultimate rallying cry. If they were going to be taxed, they demanded a voice in the government that was doing the taxing. It makes perfect sense. This single, powerful sentence actually united people from completely different backgrounds. It took a bunch of separate financial complaints and turned them into one massive, unified demand for fundamental political rights.
Part 3. Unified defiance and boycotts.
So, the colonists didn't just sit around and complain. They shifted into highly organized action. Step 1 was the Stamp Act Congress. This was a huge deal because it was the very first time different colonies formed a unified political response. They realized they were way stronger together. Step 2, widespread boycotts. The colonists simply refused to buy taxed British goods. It was a brilliant economic protest, and it severely hurt British merchants' profits, which in turn put massive pressure on Parliament to repeal the taxes. And finally, Step 3, direct action. Most famously, the Boston Tea Party, which directly targeted that sneaky Tea Act. This step-by-step escalation perfectly illustrates a deeply strategic and unified people standing up for their beliefs.
Part 4. Education, morality, and peace.
All right, so this historical lesson of unjust taxation and rebellion actually transitions perfectly into a fascinating philosophy from the Heroesmart Godly Learner series about the very purpose of learning. And it asks, what is the point of being smart without morality? The Academy explains that education intertwined with biblical morality is completely essential, and that being educated without a moral compass will ultimately just do harm. I mean, think about it. What's the point of being highly intelligent if it just leads to choices that hurt ourselves, hurt others, or prop up unjust systems? From this perspective, true education isn't just about cramming your head with data, it's about developing the moral framework you need to actually use that data wisely.
Building on that, referencing Romans 8:6-7, the series highlights a promise of peace of mind to everyone who keeps their minds spiritual. According to this framework, true education is profoundly tied to spiritual peace.
The argument here is that when learning is anchored in a really solid moral foundation, a person doesn't just gain raw intelligence, they gain a kind of wisdom and tranquility that simple data alone can never really provide.
So that leaves us with a really vital question to ponder as we wrap up today's explainer. If you were back there in 1773, would you have joined the boycott? And honestly, more importantly, looking at your own life today, how does your internal morality guide the choices you make every single day? Are you standing up for what's right when it truly counts? Think about it.